think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Money Level Show. It is Darrell Dominic, and today I got a special treat for you guys. This gentleman right here, actually, I used to mentor. He was about 16 years old at the time when I mentored him, and now he's all grown up he got the goatee and everything. He's looking sharp. My guy, Matthew Martinez, who is a certified financial planner and a financial advisor, and he does a lot of things in the realm of finance. And so, Matthew, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing well, Darrell. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. It's been a long time coming. Let's just say when we touched base the other day, I did not expect to see the direction you had gone. And I'm quite honest. I'm happy that we both kind of touched base when I was younger. We touched base again and things took off from there. So it's a pleasure to be here, my friend.
Yeah, definitely, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this for the people. And so just so y'all get a little information on Matthew. He's one of the top in the nation. He went to an internship and as for the top 100 interns in the nation for doing financial advising and financial planning. He went to college for this, and he's working at Northwestern Mutual, where he helps his clients build good portfolios. He helps them build wealth for the future and helps them, through the education process of learning how this thing in this life of wealth building works. And so I appreciate you coming on. So go ahead and give the people a little backstory of how you gotten into the world of finance.
Sure. I'll try to keep it quick because I'm a long-winded person, but I'll just let me know if I'm on time, okay?
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
So really it started in my undergrad. I was in university, and shout out to Vikings, Cleveland State.
Okay.
My haters, you stay where you at. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. But I was in my undergrad, and I had started, like in engineering, right? I have a twin brother, so we were super competitive. So I'm like, my brother's doing medical, I'm gonna be an engineer.
I forgot you had a twin, man. I forgot.
Yeah. So I jump into that, me being competitive. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna be an engineer. Hated it, man. Hated every single second of that. So switched my major. Started doing supply chain. Yeah, I'm gonna be supply. Hated that also. Switched it again. Linguistics, hated that. So I just switched my major like 4 or 5 times because I did not realize I had no idea what I wanted to be, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how I wanted to give back to the community. And so really I was just spending too much money on stuff that I was never going to use, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Myself trying to convince my parents, I got it all taken care of. Don't worry, guys. Smiling when I get home, leaving, super upset, super depressed, super sad, because I'm just aimlessly going in a direction that's not adding value.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into business and I got into marketing because I was always like an artistic kid. I would draw, I would do music, just things that helped me express myself. And so I was in marketing, and I really love marketing. I think I can sell a pencil to anybody. Let me know when you want to have that challenge. We can do that. I promise you buy it. But to that point, I felt I had found my calling. It was in marketing. This is what I need to do. This is how I'm going to change the world, right? And then I had an epiphany and wait a minute. If I stay in marketing, let's say I work for Coca-Cola. Let's say I work for Sherwin-Williams or Adidas or whatever. My job in that point is just convincing people that this company has a product that they need, whether it be soda, whether it be food, whatever. And to me, I was like, wait a minute. How am I improving my community by convincing people to buy stuff that they already have?
Yeah.
In my opinion, I'm not, right? And so that hurt me a little bit because I finally felt like I was in college for almost 7 years, man, just trying to figure it out. I'm like, after all this time, all these switches, I finally found what I want to do. And then it dawned on me like, man, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to say that I'm adding to the community, say that I'm giving back and not really doing that, right?
Mm-hmm. I
was like, man, I was defeated because I thought I found it and I didn't want it anymore, Yeah. And then one day, by the grace of God, an advisor comes in, CFP. He's like, hey, we're doing this internship, top 100 internship in the United States. If you get in, it's a big deal. If you don't stay, no big deal. You know, it'll just be on your resume and you'll get hired anywhere. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? I got into the program. In my starting class, there was 15 people. There's only 2 left, and I'm one of them, right? So top 100 internship. And then the following year, I got into the top 100 interns in the whole United States. So in every state, there's about 2,000 or 3,000 interns. There was only 100 that made it to this program, and I got in. I was like, okay, so I'm doing pretty good, right? I still don't quite know what I'm doing. I still don't know, the importance of planning. And then it clicked. I was like, wait a minute. As a planner, as a financial planner, as an advisor, I'm able to give back because, be honest with me, bro, how many people in middle school, high school, or college told anyone in the Afro-Latino community anything about taxes, anything about investing, anything about business, anything about the importance of retirement? We've never learned those things ever.
Yeah, definitely.
And so to me, it was super powerful to say, wow, I'm going to be the first person, at least in my community, to my knowledge, to be able to give back something that's actually valuable, that's actually worth something. And it doesn't cost nobody nothing but time, right? Yeah. The most important asset we have is time, right? And so I was like, that's what I've been doing, man. I just sticking to it, teaching my community, teaching my churches, teaching my high schools that I went to, teaching the colleges that I went to, just speaking with anybody I can, because the reality is everyone wants to be wealthy and build wealth for their family. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in the community that matters to me, where I grew up, nobody's learning how to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd rather have a brand new car over a brand new house. They'd rather have brand new shoes over food on the table. And I'm like, hey, they'd rather work for the rest of their life than have a retirement and chill. And I'm just like, nah, let's talk. We'll figure it out, and I want to be that person that I can actually follow through when I say I'm going to give back to my community. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, that's a little about me. Hopefully that encompasses what I'm working on, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. That actually that's very interesting. You said that because I was recently did a podcast on an episode on the wealth and equality gap, and from my research, I was studying how home ownership, and so in the Black community. In the 80s, home ownership was about 44% of Black people owned a home. And then fast forward to today, we're down about 0.3%. And then looking at the Latino community, they were at about 32%. And then fast forward to about, I think it was 2016. So not technically today. I don't know what the numbers are today, but 2016, they were at about 45%. And so, it kind of showed that increase in people coming together, buying homes, building wealth and things of that nature, even though the numbers are still low, because when you look at Caucasians or whites, they're at about 71% home ownership of the white population. So so that's really dope that you're focused on doing that. What do you feel like was a practical way that you address the needs of the community that you saw in regards to these things about building wealth? What was those conversations like? Kind of walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah. So I guess this can be a broad question, but when it came to practicality, and again, I would just keep calling it added value to the people that matter to me. The first thing was I'm bilingual, right? So I can speak another language. So there's a pretty large Latino presence in the Midwest. I would argue that it's growing very rapidly. And the first thing was just getting in front of people that no one had ever talked to them in their native tongue, right? So I was looking at the research and all the data of all the advisors, at least in my state. And to my surprise, I'm only one of maybe a handful of advisors who also do work bilingually, right? 90% of the advisors in the state that I'm in do not work explicitly in another language. They work explicitly in one language and do not kind of mix trades. So if they are working with the Hispanic community, the Latino community, they're not speaking to them in Spanish, right? So my first thing was saying, hey, how can I add more value by being the real representation of the people that matter? Just speaking to them in the way that they understand, right? Just telling them what it is, telling them how it looks, right? That was the first thing. And so that was super important for me. Everybody that's on my team right now is bilingual. speaks, writes, and does work in Spanish.
Okay.
And it's crazy because the industry is behind. So we've been having to translate stuff by ourselves, putting it through compliance, making sure it's legal, making sure it's clear to then use it. So most of the time we're just translating off rip to make sure that they understand what's going on. And then the other thing to be I'm sorry, what was the word you used in that question?
To be transparent or be practical.
Practical, yes. The other thing was the way we do advising doesn't cost anything for the consumer or the client.
Mm-hmm.
So practicality was saying, hey, I understand my community probably cannot afford a wealth manager, probably cannot afford to drop anything on planning because they're dropping it on things that are probably more important, right? So just saying to them, hey, the company pays me for the work I do. Let's just sit down and have the conversation. As long as we can spend 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, I promise you're going to see value in the conversation that we have. So it's not going to cost you anything, just time. What does your time look like?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. That's good to know. That's good to know. So what are some of the things that, I mean, obviously, like with this lack of education within the Latino community, there may be some trouble. You said you had some trouble, like kind of like translating certain concepts and things like that. Cause I'm not sure, like, how much of this goes back to even, Mexico or other Spanish speaking nations that have, societies and stuff, but like, just kind of like, how do you talk about like, okay, like a portfolio or a stock or like
just like approaching those concepts in general?
Yeah. Cause it's like, okay, like I'm not sure. I don't know Spanish, so I don't know how the language translates into those,
right.
when you talk about, a US bond or a treasury,
right.
Stuff like that.
I would say the first thing is really laying out the importance of what it means to be financially secure. Mm-hmm. And once people can grasp that, the rest of it is cake. Like, it's not that hard for people to understand it, right? Mm-hmm. So really the big part that I always ask people is, hey, Darrell, what does it mean to be financially secure to you, right? What does that mean? Mm-hmm. And then they give me their definition, and I always say, hey, that's awesome. That's beautiful. Your definition is unique to you. But the reality is there's always 3 foundations that are needed in order to be financially secure. So they follow me along this conversation, and the 3 foundations, I can even talk about them right now, is really risk management, wealth accumulation, and then the distribution of that wealth.
Yeah.
Right. So pretty much I'm just telling the client, hey, or the prospect or whatever you want to call them, hey, so-and-so, these 3 things are super important for your financial security. Is it important to you to make sure that your money and your income does not change? Yes. Is it important for you to put your money in a place where it can make money for you? Yes. Is it important for you to then create a legacy? Yes.
Yeah.
And boom, boom, boom. We break down those 3 concepts. Risk management is defense, right? How are you protecting yourself? How you protect your income? Wealth accumulation is investing, right? It's offense. Where can we put your income to make more money for you? And then the last one, the distribution of wealth, is creating legacy. Hey, do you have a legacy? Do you know who your ancestors are? If the answer is no, is it important for you to leave something for the next generation behind you? And 9 times out of 10, that answer is yes.
Yeah. Because I'm sure, like, I mean, I can't speak for the whole Latino community, but, I have some close friends of mine who, come from Mexico and had to, start from the ground up,
or Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Cuba. I mean, dude, there's so many different groups and regions of people that not only come here from the bottom up, but have completely different ways of thinking about money,
Yeah, definitely. So have you ever tapped into like, there's stocks on the US stock exchange that are more foreign, kind of Latin based countries, stocks. And so like one of them I was invested in was Ambev, which is a beer company, and they have ownership of Butch. And so And I was kind of learning more about their balance sheets and looking at their debt and looking at like, okay, they actually in a good situation considering COVID happened because they didn't have a whole lot of debt. So have you looked into like certain stocks like that and kind of, in your education, like, okay, like are these some companies that you want to support that are on the US stock exchange, or like kind of how do you go about that? Or do you mostly do US stocks, or do you get into like foreign stocks? Tell me about that.
I would say it's 9 times out of 10, an easy answer that most advisors are going to give you is it depends, right? Because everybody's completely different. Everybody's unique, and they react emotionally, they react socially, they react in many different ways depending on that. But in the case of investments, I would say if there's local businesses that I can invest in, whether it be upfront capital, whether it be that they're on the stock exchange and I can invest in them, if the numbers look right, then why not, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be something that I drop tons of money in like my standard portfolio, but it's definitely an opportunity for me to rebuild my community and help those people that care. So in the case of when it comes to building portfolios for clients, we always say, hey, these are the general ones that are going to give you a standard return. And then if you want to just put a little bit extra somewhere else, go for it, right? You don't care if you lose $1,000. You don't care if you lose 500. You don't care if you lose whatever that amount is, but they want to be able to support. So it always depends, but there's definitely there.
Is your so would you say that most of like the investments that you operate within are like more mutual fund based, or because like individual stocks it's like almost like a different type of game? Because I think we were talking earlier and I'm like going into like individual stocks and I'm like, okay, that's a whole different valuation game and things you have to research versus like obviously you got to research a mutual fund or whatnot, but it's different because it's like a pool of companies rather than individual.
So one I like that question. So one of the key things that we pay attention to, at least in the sake of Northwestern Mutual and us being brokers and a lot of different companies, is that stability is always going to be the first thing we look for. Because at the end of the day, if we're trying to get a return for the client and it's not stable, even if they say super aggressive and they're okay with it not being stable, they don't care if it's volatile, we're still going to look to a place to at least add a backbone to that volatile investment, right? So when it comes to the investment strategies that we utilize, it's usually paying attention on top of mutual funds, really to diversify portfolios and the 9 asset classes, and really just adding a few points into each one of those 9 asset classes. So whether it be, commodities, international emerging markets, large, medium, small cap stocks, the other 3 are leaving my brain right now, but you get my point, right? So just really adding diversity as best as we can and making sure that those high points are where the client wants them at.
Yeah. So would you say, so how do you go about like, obviously, you've branded yourself and your whole team can work with the Latin community. And so are you mostly like working with like retirement portfolios at jobs, or are you like working on like Roth IRAs where they kind of set up their own traditional Roth IRA? What kind of, portfolios or retirement funds are you working with?
So are you asking purely for retirement, or are you asking like general purpose?
Just like retirement, and are you mostly like, because you have like when you have a job, like you sometimes they have like the financial advisor come and then talk to you about the portfolio at your job that you have when you have a 401k or whatnot, and then you have like people that set up their own Roth IRAs outside of that, and then you have so like are you mostly like, is your clientele mostly like tied to an employer, or are they like individuals that you go out and find?
It's all across the board. So like there's nothing stopping me from meeting with someone who has group benefits as opposed to doing investments privately for their retirement. Again, it really is just a case of right fit. If I say to them, hey, what's important to you in the next 20 years when you retire? Having X amount of money liquid, having X amount of money taxed, right? Do you want to have $1 million lifestyle when you retire? Do you want to have a $50,000 lifestyle when you retire, right? So just finding those pain points and then adjusting accordingly. So a lot of people, their company matches, but the match is terrible. It's like 1%, 2%. So they're like, well, I want a little bit more money going into the retirement. I say, hey, look at a Roth IRA option. Look at, if you want to do UIL, universal life investment, you can do it that way. You can do pensions, annuities, there's so many different ways for them to invest into the retirement. So it just depends what makes the most sense for them.
So what kind of honest conversations do you have to have with like people? Not saying that no conversation is honest at all. but sometimes you have like these difficult conversations that, you have to be, kind of more like brutally honest in. I would say that I would think, like as far as like, say like someone comes to you, they're 60 years old, they don't want to work the rest of their life. And obviously you have different dynamics within the Latino community where you have more community based, and people come together and support one another. And that's what from what I've seen on the outside and me being part of the Black community, like those dynamics can look a little different at times. But so like somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I want to retire, and I'm thinking of this, like, my mother, like, she doesn't have that much retirement, and she's still working. My mother-in-law, she owns a daycare. She's still working, and she's in her 60s as well. And so, like, when I'm thinking of that, it's like, okay, well, what's the best way for them to, like, should they jump in now? Should they just save their money, move in with the kids, save their money? Like, what do you think? Like, what kind of advice do you give people in those situations?
So usually it comes down to, hey, do you want to work, at least for people that are ready to retire? Do you see yourself working for the next 20 years till you're 70? 9 times out of 10 is no, right? Because when they're there, maybe when they're younger, they say, yeah, I'll work to 70. And then they're like 50 and 60, they're like, nah, I don't want to work no more. Like stuff changes, life changes, right? And in that case, I usually tell them, hey, this is the reality. You're looking at things, I would say, a little bit late in life, but there's not much we can do. And I just laid in front of them. Either you do this and fund this annuity or whatever, and you'll have a little bit more paid out for retirement, or you do this and you have this available, or you do this and you have this available. Yeah. 9 times out of 10 at that late period of life, again, it's a little hard to get into those things because it's not that they've wasted time, but they haven't put in sooner. We call it the cost of waiting, right? Or opportunity cost. Yeah. The longer you wait to start something, your upfront capital becomes like overwhelming. So then at this point, a lot of them can't even fund into their retirement because it's just too expensive to get to what they want to get to. So at this point, it's just like, hey, this is what we can do. Do you want to put in $5 or $6 grand a year for the next 10 years? Yes, no, maybe so. And then, call it what it is. Like there's always not that much we can do in the space of later in life. So that conversation comes down to, hey, let's at least make sure when you do pass away, you're leaving something for your children or whatever, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that, that's the sad reality, within our country, like, because a lot of people, are losing their retirement. I remember a friend, not a friend, but a client of mine at my job. He lost, I think, was it like half of his retirement back in March, and that was scary for him, but he wasn't ready to retire yet. So imagine someone getting ready to retire and they saw that big dip. And obviously, there are some benefits to, the Fed coming in and kind of bailing out the markets and stuff like that, because people that weren't able to retire back in March because of the huge sharp drop we've seen, like, 80% or whatever, if they waited out this year, they would have pretty much been back to where they are and can retire, so it's definitely, I do criticize the Federal Reserve a lot, but that is an important thing. People work hard, and want to retire, and things like that. So it's good for them.
Absolutely.
So let's kind of get on another topic. So like we've been kind of chatting off screen, and we've kind of talked a little more about capitalism, and I've had a few kind of Facebook kind of back and forth about socialism and capitalism. And me, like, I consider myself more of a capitalist than a socialist. And I do have some socialist things that I do believe in, that I do believe we need, as far as like taxation for to fund police and fire departments and, ambulances and things like that. But then, well, I guess ambulances, they charge you money, but they come out, you get that $900 bill, sometimes I think I drove myself to the hospital one day when my appendix was, I think was about to burst or something. And I drove myself to the hospital, bro, because I was like, I'm not trying to pay no freaking $900 for no ambulance bill. But so like you have the taxation that do fund, education and things of that nature. But then you also have like, a lot of people would say, okay, well, obviously capitalism was built on the back of slaves, like slaves were used to build capitalism. And then you had, you got that horror part of history that, I'm definitely not in support of. And then you have like in other countries, you have socialism that's like, okay, everybody gets like more of a, not everybody, but in some countries you get more of a quality education in college because like, here, like if you have a lot of money, you can go to the big schools, if you don't, then you just got to get to where you can, and so, yeah. So kind of what's your ideas on that? Cause I've been kind of just trying to process like, okay, what ideals of socialism do I agree with? But and then what ideas I don't agree with, because I don't believe that government needs to be more involved in the private sector,
for sure,
spending as much money as they spending. So what's your thoughts on it?
So the way that I digest and have this conversation with a lot of friends, because at the end of the day, I at least want people to just think about it, right? Mm-hmm. There's no absolute right. There's no absolute wrong, unless we're talking spiritual, then we'll have, our conversation with that, right? But when it comes to understanding capitalism and communism in the economic sense, I always tell people this is the reason why the United States is in this particular situation. Okay. People always say, oh, Canada, they have universal health care, or this person has universal education, or this people have universal blah, 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 whatever. Right. And to that point, they're right. Mm-hmm. Right. They're not wrong. But I always say the United States is special because we're a democratic republic. We're not people think we're like a pure democracy. We're not, right? We're a democratic republic. What does that mean? Technically, if you want to think of it this way, we're 50 countries under a contract.
Yeah, definitely.
People think 50 states and blah, blah, blah. Oh, no. We're United States of America, but we're 50 countries that fall under a constitution and the law. So what does that mean? Each state has the ability to do whatever they want in those regards.
Yeah.
Which is why you have such a variance in education opportunity, why you have such a variance in healthcare, why you have such a variance in all these different things, right? That freedom definitely affects our return and our economy and the things that we can compete with on the scale of capitalism. But that freedom also allows people that make nothing to make something, right? It allows people to have flexibility in ways that they would not have in other places. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really, really big deal. And then as far as like overall capitalism and communism works, we were just talking about it, but I think communism is good in the household. It's good in the church, right? If my dad, before I got married, my dad would bring food for the family, right? And we commune on this food. We eat together, we sleep together, we have this home together, and we do our daily things, ideally bringing everything back for the household, right? Really, that's a small communistic network that's working in that family. And traditionally, that's the way things were, right? The same thing with church. We all tithe to work on the church, to improve the church. And then as a result, the church has better, we have lunches available. We have donations we can give, right? That's what that's made for. But the moment you start scaling those things up, that's when the issues happen, right? A great example of how economies of scale and scale impacts really the ability to be communistic or capitalistic is I was watching a video on Bugatti, and they have the Veyron, the Bugatti, Chiron, all these crazy cars. They go 1.2, $2.4 million vehicles, right? And the guy made a great point that I think could totally apply to how income goes and how the economy works for communism and capitalism. But he said the ability to go from 150 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour, you're like, oh, that's only a 50 mile an hour difference. He's like, you're forcing a car and an engine to work. It was working, let's say, 10 times as hard from 100 to 150. But he's saying from 150 to 200, it's like 20 or 30 times as hard for only 50 more miles an hour, right? To me, that's the same thing with the economy. That's the same thing with communism and capitalism, right? It works on a small scale, but the moment you add variances to the amount of work for the return increases so much that on a large scale, communism doesn't work as well. It starts to fall apart at the edges because people's opinions get in the way, people's feelings get in the way, people's perspective gets in the way, right? Those freedoms affect how those things work together.
Yeah. I definitely, even I was kind of just thinking, being, a believer in Christ and thinking about like in the Bible, it's like, okay, well, Abraham and them, they had freedom, so they had, their goats and everything. So they were able to build wealth without the involvement of government. But then obviously you go to more of like a feudalism, where you have a king and an empire and So you go to feudalism and things like that. And so, I was kind of processing that. I was like, okay, what part in the Bible was capitalism there? And then obviously we see the feudalism, and I don't think we've ever seen communism in the Bible. But I do kind of think of like the government involvement. Obviously, a lot of businesses are having hard time starting up because of just so much regulations, that shouldn't be there, that aren't necessary. And then you have, government being irresponsible with the money that they do receive from the taxpayers. So you have that piece of it. And when you think about these things, it's like, okay, I call America like capitalism for the poor, socialism for the rich. And when I say that, it's like, okay, like we had the big bailouts for the huge corporations, in a free market capitalist society. It would have been like, okay, well, you mismanage your money. You didn't save up for a rainy day.
That's on you. Correct.
That's on you. You know what I'm saying? And so like, as opposed to, us going in and bailing out. And then the airlines freaking like holding the government hostage. If you don't give us a bailout, we're going to lay off, however many thousand people, so when you think about that stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, like this is where I agree with capitalism, because it's like, these big corporations, like, okay, well, somebody else need to take the reins. Somebody, a better competitor needs to come up and with better financial responsibility and take that place. We shouldn't have, these institutions or these corporations that are just, they're solid in their place. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh no, like the government shouldn't be bailing them out. Like, yeah, they do have employees that need jobs, but we're already, paying,
but we're in the negative even more as a result of your stupidity is what happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I kind of think about that stuff, and government involvement has increased over, like largely over time. Like we haven't had a true like free market capitalist society in decades, but we still have kind of a blend of it, and right now we get a lot of people, they're like, well, it's capitalism that did this. And it's like, well, actually we do have a lot of socialist kind of practices that we've kind of
that merged into it. Right. Correct.
Yeah. So that conversation, like, some people like, they get really, really hot over it. You know what I'm saying? And rightfully so. I do think that there's a level of support that is needed for people that are really trying, that are really needing help, people on disability. It's like, okay, well, if this person really can't work, somebody has to take care of them, and I do believe that, taxpayers can take care of that. If this person is elderly, don't have, no kids or grandkids around, or, like, it's like, okay, well, I can see that, we should take care of our people in that way. But then again, you have that, where's the balance at? Where's the line at? Because obviously you get people that take advantage of the system.
Oh yeah,
and,
for sure.
And I mean, you look at all these unemployment scams and everything happened this year.
Tax fraud, yeah, all the time.
Sending stimulus checks to dead people, like, what I'm saying? Like it was just like, one of my friends, she worked at the mall, so she don't get paid a whole lot, working at the mall, but she didn't even get a stimulus. And it's like, okay, like how you didn't get a stimulus, but we sent it to deceased people, So
that's valid.
When you think about that stuff, it's like, okay, well, we have a incompetent government in the sense of financial responsibility with how much debt we've run up. And some of these people may have good intentions. Some of these people, obviously you have people that are getting into their own, they're in it for what they can get out of it, and
I would say to that point, a bigger issue too that I don't think we consider enough is that we pay attention more to the branches. Like, let's think of a tree. We pay attention more to the branches as opposed to the roots, right? Yeah. And so what I mean by that is our local governments affect the people, I would argue, more than the overall government of the United States, right? So our mayors, our council members, our whatever you want to call them, right? Mm-hmm. They definitely affect us way more than the overarching government does. And then the big brother comes in and steps in and adjusts when he needs to, right? Yeah, but I would even say, like, we as a people just need to do our due diligence and point out the things that make more sense in our community to our local governments, which I don't think we do enough. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Then we're yelling at, the president saying, hey, president, you're a terrible president, blah, 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 when a bill was passed in the state and we didn't even know it was passed and it taxes us more. And we're just like, why is the government taxing us more? It's like, no, you just didn't know your local ballots were passing something and now you're mad at other people, Yeah.
And my point is like more of just like, it's still government, you know what I'm saying? And it's not like,
for sure. Absolutely.
But it's local government. It's not, as opposed to like national. Correct. And my thing with like, communism, socialism, whichever one, they kind of have distinct differences, but I look at like, okay, if we put someone in power, and those people can have absolute power, and you look at those types of things, it's like, okay, you can get somebody really corrupt in there, and my thing is like, if we had honest and people with integrity in our governments, which there is some people out there, but there are some people that aren't, and we can, that's arguably, what percentage, how many people have integrity, how many people don't. And you do have people that are power hungry, that have these personalities that they have, whether it's a superiority complexes or whatever, what I'm saying? And they get in these positions of power, like if we go to a communist society or anything like that, then you can get somebody like that in a leadership position. I mean, you look at Hitler, you look at, these other Mussolini or whoever, that got into these positions. Obviously that was fascism, which was a total different branch, but this stuff is like interesting, man. Like, and it plays a role in our daily lives, especially, with government involvement and like, okay, at what point do the government needs to involve? At what point do they don't need to be involved, and just let the free market handle itself? Because, we can say that, right now, one of the hot topics is, systemic racism. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, yeah, I agree that things need to be put in place, but at the same time, free market capitalism
will correct it.
Yeah, we'll correct it because of, you have, the competition aspect. It's like, okay, you're not hiring black people. Okay, black people ain't going to support your business.
Correct. They're going to come over here. Exactly.
And so,
or if you do succeed, you're just succeeding in that group. You're never going to progress. Yeah. To the point of a that's valid. I agree with that.
You're going to have some horrible news coverage on you.
It's what it is, right? I think to your point, I see where you're coming from. A lot of people would be upset about that, but like, hey, if there's a company that's actually racist, let them do their thing. let them stay in their corner, and the other kids will play, right? Let them be that kid in the corner, and everybody else is chilling. So when they're wondering why their capital or their income or their growth in their company is halted, we know the reason, right? So either they adapt and adjust to the economy, and they say, hey, we apologize, we're changing our values, and everyone forgives you and forgets and moves forward, or, right, that never happens, and they stay in their corner and do their thing. So it really just comes down to, where do you want to spend your dollar, you know?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I totally agree.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's, I kind of just think of like, with that, we have a lot of laws like the Civil Rights Act and all of this stuff. Like, me doing my real estate license, like, I was kind of just thinking through, going through these times that we're in with George Floyd and everything that's happened and addressing systemic racism. I'm doing my real estate course, and I'm like, okay, I'm learning about steering, block busting, redlining and all this stuff, and how much laws have been implemented to prevent that from happening, and how much consequences you receive if you engage in the type of, exactly. And I was kind of just thinking, I was kind of just, kind of playing around, like, how could I get away with this? Like, if I was racist, and
how many hoops would you have to jump through?
Yeah. Like, I would, like, blockbusting, like, you go to different houses and you tell them, like, oh, well, minorities are coming in the neighborhood, you might want to list your property with me. It's like, okay, somebody's gonna rat you out. Like,
everything. People remember conversations more than I want to admit it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll be like, yeah, I was talking to this guy the other day, he told me X, Y, and Z, and they're like, gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So it has been, I do think that we have progressed, and we do have a lot of laws that do prevent this stuff. And, once you get into like the whole thing with, like, you got police and whether that's qualified immunity and all of that stuff, I mean, some work may need to be done there. I haven't looked fully into that, but there is a lot of other places that the laws are so strict that, it's hard to, even be racist or be unethical, against anyone that's of age, gender, disability, race, marital status, all of that. So it's been a lot of protections in that way. Well, Matthew, man, I appreciate you joining me today, man. Get into these concepts and these topics. So where can the people find you? I'm going to leave your links in the description. Just remind them where they can find you.
For sure. My contact info, like I said, my name is Matthew Martinez at Northwestern Mutual. You can shoot me an email at matthew.martinez@nm.com. Mm-hmm. And then you can shoot me a text or call me on my business phone, 216-905-4099. I am on call 24/7. So if you need something, just don't send nothing weird. Just hit me up and we can talk and touch base. It won't cost you nothing. Just introduce yourself. I promise.
Yeah, I know you got some of them call blocker apps and stuff.
Yeah, believe me, I do.
the robocall blocker apps, man. I need one of them, man. They just too expensive.
You are being screened by Google.
Definitely. Well, alrighty, man. Well, appreciate you, man, and thank you for joining the Money Level Show today.
It's a pleasure, my man. I'll talk to you soon.